Good day, my name is Tano. My presentation is based on my research titled Catechesis as Missional Formation, Youth Faith, Identity and Witness at Shepherd House Assemblies of God, Akokoamo. In this presentation, I'll review the major lessons I learned from the research. The study focused on how young people are formed in their Christian faith, how they develop their identity as believers, and how their church formation prepares them to witness for Christ in everyday life. The research examined the role of catechesis in youth faith formation. By catechesis, I mean the practice of Christian teaching, instruction, prayer, Bible study, Sunday school, youth fellowship, and other church activities that help believers grow in the faith. The study carried out at Shepherd House Assemblies of God, Akokoamo, as already mentioned, within a Ghanaian Pentecostal context. I wanted to understand whether these church practices only help young people become active church members or whether they also prepare them to become witnesses of Christ in society. So this research goes beyond being a church member but also growing it to the point where the believer becomes part of God's intention of sending people, witnessing and drawing men and women to faith. The purpose of the study was to examine how catechetical practices help young people develop Christian identity, remain spiritually committed, and understand their role in God's mission. This was important because many young people in Ghana are active in church, yes, like comparing it to US or other nations. Ghana, we have a growing church. Many go to church, many profess the Christian faith. They attend services, prayer meetings, youth fellowship, Bible study. However, the question is whether this participation truly prepares them to live faithfully outside the church. So the study asks how young people carry their faith into school, work, social media, friendships, and other public space. The research was done in context where young people face many pressures. These include digital culture, academic demands, peer influence, changing social values, and challenge of living as a Christian in a pluralistic society. One lesson I learned is that young people do not live their faith only in church. They live it also on campus, online, at home, among friends, and in society. Because of this, youth formation must prepare them for the real world, not only for church activities. The study used a qualitative phenomenological approach. This means the research focused on lived experiences of the participants. Instead of simply collecting numbers, the study listened to what young people said about their own faith journey. Data was gathered through interviews and focus group discussion. This approach helped me understand how young people experience catechesis personally, how they interpret it, and how it affects their spiritual lives. One major finding was that young people experience formation not only through teaching, but also through spiritual practices such as corporate prayer, worship, fellowship, and community life. In the study, participants showed that prayer was one of the strongest means of formation. For them, prayer was not just an activity, it was an experience that shaped their faith and helped them feel closer to God. This taught me that the Christian formation is not only intellectual, it also spiritual, emotional, communal, and practical. The first major lesson I learned is that formation must go beyond information. It is not enough for young people to know Bible verses, doctrines, or even church dogmas and teachings. True Christian formation must shape their character, values, and spiritual discipline, lifestyle, and relationship with God. A young person may know the Bible or what the Bible teaches, but the deeper question is whether that teaching is shaping how they live. Catechesis must therefore move from the head to the heart and from the heart to daily action. So we start from what you know to what you have become. That is what catechesis must focus on. What you know must translate to what you become, how you live. For this reason, another key finding was that young people often struggle to connect what they learn, what they return to school, social or other public spaces. That is, I want to take it that again. Some participants felt strong inside the church, but less confident when they returned to school, social media, or public spaces. So they were not connecting with the outside world as they were connecting with the church. This taught me there is sometimes a gap between church formation and everyday Christian living. Young people need guidance on how to apply their faith in practical situations so that they will be able to feel comfortable practicing their faith not only in the church but also outside the church in their daily lives, whatever that they do in their family lives. They must feel that they must be able to experience it, they must be able to practice what they believe in. The second lesson I learned is that the church must prepare young people for the world, not only for the church membership. The goal of catechesis should not only be to produce active members who attend services and participate in church programs. It must also form young people who can live as faithful students, honest workers, responsible citizens, and Christian witnesses. This means that Bible teaching should connect with real life issues such as peer pressure, social media, morality, leadership, relationship, and public witnesses. The third major finding was that missional consciousness was already emerging among some of the young people. Even though some participants did not use the word mission, their actions showed a sense of mission. They encouraged friends, prayed for others, gave advice, supported people in difficult moments, and tried to live an example. This taught me that the mission is not always loud or formal. Sometimes mission begins in simple acts of care, kindness, presence, and encouragement. Another important lesson that I learned is that mission is not only preaching or evangelistic programs. Mission can also happen through the way Christians live every day. It can be seen in kindness, honesty, prayer, encouragement, moral examples, and helping others. That is, missions isn't not just what you profess, but how you live. So, how a person lives also demonstrates or shows the God that he believes. So, the believer, if he lives right, shows or demonstrate the God that he worships or knows. That is basically what this particular one is emphasizing. But that is what I have learned, that if people live their lives, it shows what they believe. Now, moving from what I have learned, the major challenge I identified in the research was the gap between inward spiritual formation and outward missional engagement. The church is helping young people grow spiritually, but the research showed that they are not always intentional or intentionally prepared to carry that spirituality into the world. This is an important lesson because spiritual formation should not remain inside the church. It should equip young people to live as witnesses of Christ wherever that they find themselves. Unfortunately, as people were giving out these things, it was clear and obvious that although they live the greater part of their life outside the church, they are focused on living and doing, and the teachings that were given to them was focused on being in the church, being groomed in the church, but not being intentional about how they should practice such teachings that they have received from the church outside the church, which they usually spend most of their time there. That was a major challenge. This research changed my understanding of youth ministry and catechesis. Before the study, I saw catechesis as mainly teaching and instruction. But through the research, I learned that catechesis is much deeper. It is about shaping the whole person. It forms the mind, the heart, and the character, the identity and mission of the believer. It also helps young people understand who they are in Christ and how they should live in the world. These are the recommendations that I have. Based on the lessons learned, I recommend that churches should connect Bible teaching to real life experiences of young people. That the Bible teaching that we offer, that the church offers, shouldn't be distant from what they experience. It should be able, they should be an intertwined thing. So whatever that they teach must relate to real life experiences of these young ones. That the teaching shouldn't be aloof from what the young ones experiences. Also, the church should teach young people how to witness in daily spaces such as school, work, online platforms, and social relationships. It shouldn't be the mission team only who gathers and decide that today we want to do missions. Their everyday experiences, their everyday life should be about the mission of God. That is how the church should prepare them. That is how the church should mentor them. That in every situation that they find themselves, they can use it to teach. Also, there should also be mentorship, open discussion on this digital culture, practical teaching on Christian identity and mission. This will help young people move from simply attending church to becoming faithful witnesses. In conclusion, this research taught me that catechesis is more than religious instruction. It is a process of forming young people in faith, identity, spiritual commitment, and Christian witnesses. The study showed that Shepherd House Assemblies of God is already forming young people spiritually. However, there is a need to intentionally connect that formation beyond the church walls. The main lesson I take from this research is that effective youth formation should move young people from being active church members to becoming active Christian witnesses in society. When catechesis forms young people spiritually and prepares them for mission, the church becomes not only a place of worship, but also a place where witnesses are prepared for the world. Thank you.